Hi, I'm Matthew Montgomery. I'm a final year media production student at John Moores. I have sensorineural hearing loss, which affects only my left ear.
We had no idea that Matthew had hearing problems when he was born, right through until he started school. His development was generally okay, so we didn't have any delayed speech, and he was generally a really happy little boy, loved music, always loved music. So we had no idea about the hearing.
Whilst Matthew was in reception, we noticed that through speaking with his teachers and his teaching assistants that he'd quite often take himself off into his own little world, or that he would cope with his hearing loss, which we didn't know about at the time, by singing and that kind of thing, which again, we thought it was just perfectly normal. We thought he was just a normal, happy, healthy kid who was, just going around the world in his own unique way. I
mean, one of the things that Matthew has always been very good at is memory and memorising things. So I think what we didn't realise he was struggling as much as he was, because I would read with him. He would very quickly, after the first read, memorise the books. And so I thought, oh, this is brilliant, he's reading and what have you. And it wasn't really until he was in year 2 that we found that he was actually really delayed with the reading. It was a real surprise when he was diagnosed.
Once Matthew was diagnosed, I think that he got quite a significant amount of support from the audiology department in Manchester. They diagnosed his hearing difficulty, they gave him hearing aids, they went into school and did an assessment and actually provided the school with some additional technologies like a microphone system that his teacher could wear. Ultimately, Matthew actually found that kind of system wasn't right for him, and we stopped using that and instead just relied heavily on the hearing aid. And at times, when things got a little bit too loud, he would just simply take it out.
When he was fitted with grommets, it was absolutely amazing, because again, we had no idea what grommets were or anything, but it really made one of his ears almost perfect. And for me, the most amazing day was when he'd fitted his grommets, we'd got home, we opened the back door, and he went, "Mum, what's that?" And I went, "That's a bird." He went, "God, I've never heard that before." And that was just like a shock. It was, oh my goodness. So you start to really realise the world he's living in and how much he's missing, and how amazing it is that he can pick up things like music and so on, because there is just so much that he's actually missing.
My wife and I both were lucky enough to go to university, but we just never thought that was right for Matthew. But it wasn't so much about his academic performance, it was more about his personality and the kind of things that he was interested in. He was always interested in technology, he was always interested in really creative things. Because I think it was really only when he went to university and that he was assessed for disabled student allowance, and he got an awful lot of support in terms, again, of technologies, but also with John, his scribe, that we very quickly began to realise just how much he was missing out on. And that first semester in particular was really interesting for us, because suddenly Matthew really started to blossom and really found something that he was particularly interested in and was good at. And because of that additional support that he was getting, that he didn't get through schooling, was able to really shine.
I'm John. I'm a student support worker at Liverpool John Moores University. I take notes at Matthew's lectures and note down any important information that the tutors might say and any important information from the lectures. When we first met, he just arrived in Liverpool and everything was quite overwhelming, as it is to a lot of new students who arrive in a new city. I asked him how he would like support through his university career and have carried on from there.
So this is the TV studio. I've used it for some of my modules as well as just projects in general. Got many lights and many cameras, so you can kind of do whatever you want with it. But from primary school I had hearing aids in both ears, and they were quite big, quite colourful looking, and obviously meant that it stuck out. Now I've changed over to more private hearing aids, tiny little, same colour as my skin hearing aids. Means I don't get it noticed, which is kind of like a blessing and a curse at the same time.
My name is Andrew Catini and I am an independent hearing aid dispenser. So I test people's hearing and I fit private hearing aids. I'm independent, so I do every single brand, so it's a bit different from going into a shop where they specialise with just one brand and it can only offer you that. When Matthew started university, Jerry, like any good father, didn't want Matthew to go to university disadvantaged, because if you're not hearing fully in lectures and stuff like that, it could affect your grade. So he wanted to get a test done and see what there was that might, give Matthew a better chance of achieving his potential at uni.
In the hearing aid ear, it just sounds more distorted. It just sounds like, well, it's a hearing aid, so it's a microphone trying to send a louder sound to my ear in hopes that I get the same information and just pass it on essentially. But with it being a microphone, it's just overwhelmed and just starts distorting because it's battling for what sounds should be heard. On my old NHS hearing aids, it was kind of like a set and play kind of thing where you can tap the top of it and it does volume control. But with the private hearing aids, I can also control it all through my phone. So I've got presets for different environments. I've also got little hearing aid tools that I don't use as much as I really should. I've got like this little disc that goes on the table that's got like 8 microphone bits, and I can adjust which one is playing. I didn't get those tools till I came to university, and as I joined university when I was like 18, 19, by that point you've already built enough coping mechanisms to the point where you feel like it's not necessary. I'd say the best space that's probably for the freedom of sound is just with my headphones on. I genuinely have more joy out of just sticking headphones on, listening to music, avoiding the real world, more than having my hearing aid in all the time. I honestly use headphones in pretty much 90% of my day. If I'm walking around outside, going to the shops, getting on a bus, getting to uni, and even around the house, got headphones in, playing music, it just feels kind of more personal, more kind of isolating, but in like a peaceful way. I think that's the biggest thing, is I finally have a chance to not have to focus so hard on the sounds around me, but instead I've got control of the sounds around me. I mean, I've got moderate to severe, but as it's only in my left ear, it's seen as just normal because I've got my right ear to replace it. But I Like, there's just so many varieties of hearing loss that I get that they can't cater for all of them or understand all of them, but just understanding it in general would make it a lot more accepted. Only recently, British Sign Language has been seen as a language and is starting to be introduced in like primary schools and high schools and stuff finally. But for somebody like me, my hearing's not severe enough to warrant it. But say for instance I know firsthand through trying to develop this documentary, and my first plan was to get deaf people in to learn what their life experiences were, and sign language interpreters are either really expensive or very limited in time because of just the sheer amount of people that they need to cater for. If we can teach more people about it, that's probably one way. And just overall education of it all, because not enough people know the different levels, they know of sign language, but not enough people are taught it. If I could go back to younger Matthew, it would be a way of showing you that you are still capable of doing what everyone else is doing and more, and that this hearing loss doesn't define you.